Afternoon. Sorry about the brief delay. There were some mild technical issues. So the question is, why are so many fans of Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones so set on evil Dany? So I should define what I mean by evil Dany, or else evil Mad Queen Dany, etc. So what I mean by that is that Dany's story in the books will, or rather I should say, is intended to deliberately and lovingly massacre the small folk population of King's Landing. That's the story that Grrm has in mind for A Song of Ice and Fire. So, is this at all likely? Well, firstly, we're not going to get Dream of Spring, so we may never find out unless Dany arrives at King's Landing in winds, because we probably still get winds in some form or other. So we'll at least get part of winds, probably. Well, we already have parts of winds, in a manner of speaking, if you count the sample chapters. So, now, evil Dany, in that sense, we know is a last-minute invention of D&D. Originally, their original plan was that Dany would accidentally set off wildfire in the course of burning the Red Keep and attacking Lannister soldiers. And our sources for that information, you can find them in the Dragon Demands video on the WGA archived script. So the sources for that are the script for the episode, concept art, and the VFX team on the Blu-ray commentary. So we know that that's a very, very late change. There's also other evidence that the Dragon Demands adduces, such as Emilia Clarke in interviews. She doesn't seem to be referring to the same story as what we saw on screen. And things like that. So, there's an argument. I've heard the argument that although, yes, it's a last-minute decision, a change, but it might still come from Grrm. Now, there are three problems to that. Firstly, there's no evidence for that. And what may be, as they say, what may be gratuitously asserted may also be gratuitously denied. So, then, why would they then put it at the last minute? If we're part of Grrm's original outline, why would they change that to that at the last minute? Wouldn't they, if they're using his outline, wouldn't they go with that from the start? Why would they change it? And lastly, we know, because Grrm has told us so, that he was not involved in the later seasons. in 2022, and some of this may be found in the Phoenix Ashes video on how it's not the real ending. The ending of Game of Thrones is not the ending of the books. In 2022, Grrm says that he was not kept to date by the final seasons. In the same year, he also says, "I'm gardening further and further away from the show." So I think we can exclude that. So the evidence so there's overwhelming evidence that this is a late decision that they made. Now, when my reply, we know that several plot points in the show did come from Grrm. We know that Bran being king comes from Grrm, Hold the Door comes from Grrm, and burning Shireen comes from Grrm, whatever. But we also know that there are things they made up themselves. We know they made up Azor Ahai because they said so. They changed that because, quote, it just didn't feel right to have Jon do it. And Jon killing Dany apparently is also something they came up with. One of them is quoted as saying that that's something we came up with in season 3. If they got it from Grrm, why would they use the phraseology we came up with? Wouldn't they say Grrm told us that? So, given all that, why do people so badly want to believe? Some people so badly want to believe that Dany is like this mass murderer. I'm not going to get into things like misogyny and that because I don't want to. Because that would be unfair to accuse all the people who go with evil Dany of being misogynists. It would be unfair. Although I will say that you've got evil Mad Queen Cersei. If you've got evil Mad Queen Cersei and evil Mad Queen Dany, like we've got two powerful female characters who are both criminally insane, you know. But let's start with the better arguments. Some of the hatred comes because of certain acts that Dany did, which could reasonably be called cruel. Like Astapor and the crucifixion of the masters at Meereen. But both of these are directed at the slave masters. So that I'm not going to defend that, but it doesn't foreshadow massacring small folk. She's punishing the slavers for their cruelty, is what's happening. In the case of Meereen, it's because they crucified these children just to taunt her. These slave children just to taunt her. And yeah, it would have been better to do an investigation to find out who did it and who didn't do it. But does Dany at this point have does the infrastructure, legal court infrastructure, state infrastructure even exist for that? I can only think of a couple of cases where she has a go at small folk. The wine seller and his daughters and Miriam Azdur. Are either of those actually small folk? I'm not sure. But those are targeted to individuals, not to entire groups. She doesn't ever do a wholesale attack on small folk or ordinary people. Her wholesale acts are always directed at at the masters. And so, and does all that even indicate that she's mad, let alone that she's mad or like pure evil? Especially when you put it in the context of the social structures as they exist at the time. They don't have like the 20th century. The rule of law basically doesn't exist to any appreciable extent, it seems. So let's think of what else. I mean, if we're going to take those actions into account, we also have to take account, for example, in Meereen, she's constantly compromising. She's constantly trying to work with the elites that are there, even the former slavers. She spares the hostages. She tends the Astapori refugees. So it doesn't really make sense to just focus on the cruel acts. I would also add that this whole Mad Queen thing shows perhaps a slightly less than enlightened attitude towards mental illness. So, and speaking of madness, Targaryen madness, which seems to have been vastly overstated. If you look in the histories, it seems that they're not even a handful were mad. Like Baelor was mad, probably mad. Aerion was mad. Aerys was mad. Was Maegor mad as such? Maegor the Cruel, was he actually mad? I'm not sure that he was actually mad. I'm not convinced he was actually mad. So, and Rhaegal is mentally deficient. So, one more point. Assuming that Dany does become pure evil, what is gained in aesthetic terms? Now, where in that is the human heart in conflict with itself? How is that a gray character? Why do we suddenly want like this pure black, pure evil character? What sort of? I mean, we already have Ramsay and Vargo and Joffrey, sort of Joffrey, although he's kind of too young to be pure evil yet. He's just heading that way. Little Walder is in a similar condition. But in terms of main characters, who do we have that's pure evil? I mean, the closest thing is Cersei. And Cersei's point of views are nothing like Dany's. So what ending will Dany have? There are several possibilities. One possibility is having the original plan of D&D's original plan for Dany, where she tries to burn the Red Keep and accidentally sets off the wildfire. It's not impossible that they could have got that from Grrm and later changed it. It's still not great, mind you, but it's acceptable. It could cause conflict, and which would lead to Dany renouncing the throne. Even there, I would remark that there's more foreshadowing for Cersei and Jonqon burning King's Landing than there is for Dany. For Cersei, she burns the Tower of the Hand, and she finds this. She has this erotic expression on her face. Jonqon regrets having not followed Tywin's example and just burnt down down Stony Sept when they were hiding Robert. He should have just burnt it down. So that's a lot more foreshadowing than Dany doing it. So another possibility, Dany rules Westeros after she helps fight the others and sacrifices her dream for the Red Door. She just has to give up being happy for herself and has to sacrifice herself to her duty. That could work. That's a little bland. And also, you'd somehow have to reconcile it with Bran being king, which we know Bran's going to be king in some sense or other. So you could do the contrary. After fighting the others, she renounces the throne and goes back. She just goes back to not to the actual Red Door necessarily, but to her ordinary life. And she's more or less happy that way, but she has to renounce her ambition. So that's another possibility. Another possibility is Dany, after fighting the others, realizes she belongs in Essos and returns to Meereen because she has her duties to the people that she freed from slavery. So that's another possibility. And another one is Dany dies fighting the others. She sacrifices her life for the good of Westeros. So another possibility is Jon kills Dany, but that's probably from D&D, as I believe I mentioned earlier, because they said that's something we came up with in season 3. So Jon could do it just to save his family or the North. But and then the other possibility is the whole Azor Ahai. Jon is Azor Ahai. Dany is Nissa, and so he stabs her to save the world. But I mean, how likely is that in the story? I mean, do we see like main characters doing random things just because of prophecy and because can you picture Jon saying, "I'm Azor Ahai and I must kill you," and Dany is saying, "I am Nissa, I will accept this. Slay me that we may save the world." Is that something that's really likely to happen? It just doesn't seem to fit. So, and one more thing about the Dany hate. It reminds me of Sansa and the cat hate. Like people will say of Sansa that she never thinks of anybody else, which obviously is untrue because she intercedes for Dantos or Catelyn. Catelyn is reduced to the stupid and evil things that she's done. So for some reason, this seems to happen to female characters the most. So, one more thing I should mention is the blurb. There's a blurb for Winds of Winter that, let's see if I can find that. It's on Google Books. Supposedly this originally comes from his publisher, HarperCollins Publishers Limited, 2007. At this point, Winds of Winter was predicted to have 704 pages, which is amusing. So, what does it say? Winter has come at last, and no man will say whether it will ever go again. The wall is broken. The cold, dead legions are coming south, and the people of the 7 kingdoms turn to their queen to protect them. But Daenerys Targaryen is learning what Robert Baratheon learned before her. That is one thing to win a throne and quite another to sit on one. Before she can hope to defeat the others, Dany knows she must unite the broken realm behind her. Wolf and Lion must hunt together. Maester and Greenseer work as one. All the blood feuds must be put aside. The bitter rivals and sworn enemies join hands. The Winds of Winter tells the story of Dany's fight to save her new one kingdom, of two desperate journeys beyond the known world into the very hearts of ice and fire, and of the final climactic battle at Winterfell, with life itself in the balance. Which I'm not going to go into that in detail because others have done that better. I will just mention a couple of things. This does seem to confirm a final battle at Winterfell, whereas we had thought before that it would be like a King's Landing. That would make more sense for them to go south to King's Landing. The others and the army of the dead. But there's nothing here about Dany having to quell resistance as such. It's more that she has to unite people who are fighting against each other. It does suggest difficulties in ruling, but it doesn't suggest you're going mad or turning into a mass murderer. Now this, I don't put too much emphasis on this because it's I'm not going to say it's dubious, but it's uncertain. It's of uncertain provenance. So I'm not going to put too much emphasis on that, but it does seem to provide a bit of confirmatory evidence that evil Dany is just not going to happen. So okay, that's that. Hopefully, if you're one of the Dany haters, or if you're a partisan of the Mad Queen, you didn't hate this too much. So either way, have a riot.